Today on Strange and Suspicious. The dead come back to life, courtesy of AI, to comfort the people left behind. Terrible idea?
It just doesn't feel right to me.
Are you saying there's no benefit for closure? Let's say like you could have a pretty authentic conversation with that person.
Authentic is the key word here because it's extremely unhealthy to say that this is a way to actually grieve. Like, it's not real.
A father disappears with his 3 children, resurfaces, then vanishes for good. A mom's desperate plea to her ex-husband, come back with our kids.
Bring my babies home.
He is known to be a survivalist. He's known to have military training.
If he's robbing banks, if he's stealing cars, he's living in a state of paranoia, and he's not fit to care for children.
A religious site far, far away that some say can do what doctors can't, cure them.
There's been reports of 7,000 miracles.
But what's to say that this is a miracle?
A miracle is not within the understanding of science.
Faith, believing in something can be an explanation for a lot of this stuff.
It's mind over matter in a way. A zoo animal like no other is a chupacabra roaming in Amarillo, Texas.
A chupacabra is kind of half animal, half human, and they do scary things at night.
Look at this. This is the Amarillo Zoo.
Lord have mercy.
What is that? There are people who think this is awesome. I think this is really bad. They're using AI now to create avatars of dead people so that the survivors can mourn.
In China, death has long been a taboo topic. A host of companies in China want to use generative AI to change how people cope with loss.
奶奶，我不开心哎。
孩子，要保持正能量。
This is not a good idea.
Yeah, there's this Chinese AI company called Silicon Intelligence, and what they're doing is if your family member passes, you can send in pictures of them, you can send in clips of them speaking, and they will make an AI version of your dead loved one to say the things that they used to say to you to hopefully make you feel good, but it just doesn't feel right to me.
This is about mourning the passing of somebody and using AI to recreate that person as some kind of comfort.
I want to hear it.
I love your sense of humor, and I miss the way you used to snort when you laugh. I love your eyes, and I miss the way your nostrils flare when you're mad at me.
It almost sounded like his voice, like a weird, demented version of his voice. That's really cool.
I'll tell you why I think this is really bad, because there's a whole almost physiological thing with grief, that one of the things you need to do is miss the person and get over the sadness and the grief and keep the memories. But if you allow them to keep holding on, they're never going to grieve properly.
It's part of the human condition of grief and loss and getting through it and then moving on.
This is what makes us human authentically, is that we experience the grief and we grow from that grief. We become different people. This is fake.
Authentically is the key word here because it's extremely unhealthy to say that this is a way to actually grieve. Like, it's not real. It's not a real way.
每一天每一刻，我都希望我能在你们的身边，给你们温暖和力量。
This is Shenmore's voice, brought back into being after his death last year. It may sound robotic and uncanny, but for his parents, it doesn't matter.
People not learning how to live without someone or something, as painful as it could be, is one of the greatest disservices that you can give a human being. And so if you are positioning people, you are introducing software and protocols and practices and procedures that are going to put people in a position where they don't learn how to live without someone or something, it becomes toxic.
So why can't you give closure to people? Are you saying there's no benefit for closure? Let's say like you weren't there when the person died. It was like a tragic accident and that person's really struggling with closure, right? So if you could have a pretty authentic conversation and talk to that AI.
But that's the operative word. There's no authenticity there.
It's not authentic. You know what it's like? It's like you're on a diet, but you just want to eat this ice cream sundae because it makes you feel good for about 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden you feel terrible about yourself. And it's the same thing. You listen to this this, and it's this placebo type thing. And when it's over, then you have to deal with this reality, and you've just heard this other thing, and it messes you up.
On a deep human level, we see why people are doing this. Again, like nature is life and death, and when we are holding on to death, we are actually proclaiming we are not present in life.
You know, I have a really good friend who just lost her husband, and they were married for almost 50 years. And she's really grief-stricken because she's never experienced anything like this, and I have. And I told her, I said, this just, it's part of what humans can do. It's part of what animals do. Animals do this, and it's built into us. And to short-circuit it is terrible. And I was trying to tell her, you will get past this. Living beings are programmed to do this kind of thing.
I took a class called Close Relationships Across a Lifespan, which completely reframed the notion of grief for me. It's not something that you get over, per se. It is something that you adapt with into a new version of yourself, which doesn't have to be sad. You can be happy through it. The problem with this is that this stunts the process.
Right, that's
But the thing is that the reason that happens is because there are two major moments in someone's life where you are financially irrational. It is a wedding and it is a funeral. And this is an extension of the funeral irrationality. You want to hold on to something and attach yourself to something even though it's already gone.
And the problem is that on a level, you think I'm being comforted, but then you know it's not real, and it drives you crazy.
To your point, Harvey, when the journalist Liz Jones, who also tried this and tried the process of, talking with her deceased mother, she said that she actually had more grief after the situation. And so that's the pain of it.
Because you miss the person more if you feel you're still hanging on.
It could make you doubt your relatives, their relationship.
Would you have another go?
No, because I felt more grief when we ended the chat, because the bot starts to die and she said, I'm going. So it's like she was dying all over again. I think we should let the dead rest in peace and we shouldn't disturb them.
This is misguided comfort.
In addition to the fact that it's misguided comfort, what makes it concerning and unethical to me is that it lays the groundwork for the exploitation of grief, of love, because this is not the only company that is doing this.
With Storyfile Lite, you can record yourself on your desktop computer and mobile devices. And within moments, artificial intelligence transforms your video responses into real-time, interactive conversation. This is the real you.
If one company is doing it and two companies are doing it, where does it end? What's the line in the sand? Where does this become morally not sound anymore?
That comes down to intention though, right? Because the intention of just making videos is for fun, but to be a company that's like, let's exploit all these people who've lost loved ones, but we're only going to sell it to them for 30 days. That's no business model, right? The business model is to get people addicted to your product and to keep them coming back. So their intention is to make a long-term product.
If you want to talk to your deceased relatives, you don't need AI. You can sit in your car and have a conversation to yourself.
All right, let's say they didn't die. Let's say they didn't die, but I had a really bad breakup with somebody.
No.
Oh my God.
Coming up. Where is Tom Phillips and his 3 kids? He disappeared in New Zealand. He resurfaced, disappeared again, and that's end of story as far as we know right now. What happened to them?
He is very clearly evading law enforcement. He is on the run, and these kids are just accomplices. He's living in a state of paranoia, and he's not fit to care for children.
They're being manipulated, they're being brainwashed.
Or they become Patty Hearst.
Police believe this is Tom Phillips and one of his children in Pio Pio at around 2 in the morning earlier this month.
Where is Tom Phillips and his 3 kids? That is something authorities have been looking at for a couple of years now. He disappeared in New Zealand.
Tom Phillips and his 3 children have been missing since December of 2021.
He resurfaced, disappeared again.
There have been recent sightings, including in Te Awamutu and Hamilton, where Phillips was spotted at 2 Bunnings warehouses, allegedly driving a stolen Toyota Ute. This September, police charged him with a Te Kuiti bank robbery, alleging this was him leaving the scene. His disappearance is believed to be linked to a custody issue.
And that's End of story as far as we know right now. What happened to them?
Obviously, he disappeared with the kids, taking them with him, went off grid. He appears when people were worried that the kids were dead, that they were never going to be found again. He shows up, and then he goes off grid again. The worry is their well-being in the care of this man. But here's the thing, 99% of the kids that are abducted by their own parents, thankfully, are not physically harmed. They don't turn up dead.
But why are you saying abducted? How do you abduct a kid when you have custody?
If you're worried about losing that custody at some point or it being revisited.
Was he? Was he worried?
Everyone kept saying custody battle, but I kept seeing in articles that the reason that he had custody is because mom had some stuff going on. They never went into specifics. I don't know if she had a drug habit or if she just wasn't fit to raise the children.
My babies deserve better. I'm just a mother standing here in front of the world, begging you all to help me bring my babies home.
They said that she was battling her own demons. But I have to note that when they came back, the kids were happy, they were fed, they were well nourished, they went out camping. He is known to be a survivalist. He's known to have military training. This is a very remote area where you have to know these skills.
But he's depriving them of schooling, of socialization with other people, with medical care.
Regarding the kids appearing to look happy, I've known several women in abusive relationships, and a lot of times they appear happy as well. I've known people who have been in cults before. They also appear happy.
They're being manipulated,
exactly.
They're being brainwashed.
Or they become Patty Hearst.
If it's Stockholm Syndrome, it's entirely possible.
Right. There have been these theories that he may have done bad things to these kids, and they may not be alive. I don't think that's the case. Just the fact that he resurfaced once tells me that this was his thing. He wanted to go off the grid with his kids, but the kids are okay. If you take away the crimes, then he's made a decision to homeschool, to let the kids live in the wilderness, and the worst you could say is maybe you'd call it child endangerment or something, but it's not kidnapping, it's not abduction.
I think it's also a survival technique that he is just putting in place.
He's living in a state of paranoia, and he's not fit to care for children. In the beginning of the timeline, it seemed like this is an eccentric father, this is a doomsdayer plot, right? He's taken the kids, maybe it's not necessarily harmful. Where this all kind of goes awry is around August 2023. That's where we see him with armed robbery. That's where we see him in stolen cars. So clearly, something is building up in his mind that I don't know we can pinpoint a motive, because I think this is born out of mental illness. He is very clearly evading law enforcement. He is on the run, and these kids are just accomplices.
Okay, I have a theory. The kids disappeared in 2021. So they had just experienced a hideous year of COVID where they were cooped up inside. So you think of the mindset of a kid who's trapped, and all of a sudden they have this vast freedom with their dad, and you could see why they would be kind of on board for something like that.
He's allowed to raise them however he wants.
But if he robbed this bank, he's not being a good role model. He's not providing a good life for these children, period.
He's an unhinged and dangerous person. That's the clear thing here. If he's robbing banks, if he's stealing cars, it's unequivocal to talk about this other than saying he's a dangerous person who's caring for these kids.
But he's also making other intentional moves to stay off the grid. For example, he's paying cash in order to get goods so that there is no record of what he buys and what he has.
This guy knows what he's doing, although I'm surprised they haven't found him yet, because I can almost guarantee you he's on his farm or very near his farm.
We're not even talking about the population of the town, how small of a place this is. I mean, these kids were not exposed to very much even in their town life before they went off the grid. So this is not a huge, drastic life change.
Yeah, 69 people in the town. It's sort of like being in the wilderness anyway.
Exactly. This lifestyle may not be all too different from what they have known their entire life.
But he crossed the line when he started committing felonies, and that's where the concern comes in.
What this is a ticking time bomb. There is going to be a moment where one of those kids is going to break away from this. There is going to be a breaking point where one of those kids is going to deviate from his care, from his dictatorship, and they are going to break out, and the whole thing goes belly up.
Coming up. So there's a town in France, it's called Lourdes, which is a kind of a shrine to the Virgin Mary. And there are all these stories about people who have these miraculous recoveries that are hard to explain medically. So there's a town in France, it's called Lourdes, which is a kind of a shrine to the Virgin Mary. 3 million people a year visit this place. And there are all these stories about people who have these miraculous recoveries that are hard to explain medically.
This is actually common amongst the Catholic Church because this is not the only place where miracles happen. With the shrine that you were talking about, there has been reports of 7,000 miracles. However, only 70 have been confirmed by the Catholic Church.
Okay, that part. So I gotta believe that there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have visited this sanctuary. And if only 70 are, being confirmed as miracles, I'm sorry, is the water just selecting who they're going to give a miracle to and who they're not?
Well, maybe they just don't come forward to talk about it.
Or maybe the healing was
ridiculed.
not the healing that they actually needed. Maybe they needed their heart healed and not their body
Placebo.
They have revamped their policies recently. The protocol of what is considered a miracle, because they are concerned about this.
But what's the expertise to say that this is a miracle?
That's the thing. What it revolves around is the label of miracle, because science is not going to accept it no matter what.
We accept things all of the time. That's our whole thing. That's our shtick.
A miracle is not within the understanding of science the way that it's been framed.
So no critical thinking. That's convenient.
No, it's not. It's just not.
The doctors that they have there actually have come up with their own criteria, and it's a little vague, but they say you have to have a severe disease diagnosis and then be cured instantly, suddenly, completely, and long-lasting. And then there's no scientific or medical explanation after consulting with hundreds of doctors that can explain it.
There's a woman named Sister Bernadette Morillo who was on 60 Minutes, and she says she fit that profile to a T.
Then I felt some kind of heat coming into my body. I felt relaxed, but I didn't really know what that was meaning. And in my room, I heard this inner voice again telling me, take all your braces off. I didn't think twice, and I started taking my foot brace off. And my foot, that used to be crooked, was straight, and I could actually put it on the ground without feeling.
Can we remove the supernatural or religious aspect from this? I'm curious about the conversation of whether or not somebody under a placebo can have such an intense psychological and physical reaction to something they can actually be healed. That's interesting to think about.
I think the predicate of that may be wrong, because you're assuming they have a real problem that miraculously gets fixed. What if the problem isn't real but psychological, and you're able to jump that barrier?
Yeah, but I love that in this case, her doctor recommended she go to a shrine.
I mean, it's kind of like your medical professional being like, I really don't know, maybe you should try smoking weed. Like, doctors will say that.
But weed has efficacy.
The Catholic Church, though, they're quick to jump on an unexplained phenomenon being a miracle, and then explain phenomenons. They're like, oh, that's not science.
If there is someone who believes this and wants to go, there is no right of anybody else to say, that's not real.
If it makes you feel better, totally do it.
But
for
that's
sure.
it. It's more here.
And sadly, I think when people are faced with like terminal illness and stuff like that, they would do anything.
Faith is a powerful healer for a lot of people.
But sometimes people with terminal illnesses who do that are not well served by going to places that are, fool's gold.
I just real quick think with this, it's more of we don't fully know the science yet, as opposed to calling it divine intervention. That's how I'm gonna
I love
conclude
that.
it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Coming up.
The Amarillo Zoo, they have this still photo, and people have thought, okay, maybe it's a coyote. They've also said raccoon, like if you look at the head. One of the other very common ideas on this is it a chupacabra?
You know the Simon and Garfunkel song, Something's Happening at the Zoo? I do believe it's true. Look at this.
Lord have mercy.
What is that?
Oh, it's cute. It's a furry.
Yeah, right? It's a dude in a suit.
So this is the Amarillo Zoo, and they have this still photo, and people have thought, okay, maybe it's a coyote. They've also said raccoon, like if you look at the head, it sort of seems like that. But one of the other very common ideas on this is it a chupacabra? You always hear the term chupacabra. I think a lot of us have heard it, but you're like, well, what's a chupacabra? A chupacabra, the term means goat sucker, but the reality of it is it's a I would say a mythical forest being. They're always kind of half animal, half human, and they do scary things at night, right?
It's a cryptid.
It is. It's very much, right? And they operate in that way, and it's used to explain things that you find in the morning. You're like, wait, why did this animal die? Like, the chupacabra, right? And so there's no really good definition of what exactly it looks like.
So what this is, I'm surprised the city's playing coy here. The city's like, we're not involved in a publicity stunt, but they're not saying we don't know someone else who might have, or they took advantage of somebody walking by in the costume, right? Because they are using it to kind of play with the followers and be like, what do you think it is, you know?
I could see them saying chupacabra because it was found in Texas, but if this was only one night and no one has ever seen this creature again, I think that possibly it's a werewolf.
Oh, God.
Right when I thought she was gonna throw some logic at it's a werewolf. I'm so I really thought you were gonna say alien. I'm like, that feels alien-like to me.
I could stand like that. It's just.
I think it's Ashley.